Hello, everyone. It's great to see you all. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about various uses of AI and how a few of these companies are using it. I'm Chris Farmer, founder and CEO of SignalFire, which is a venture firm built on top of a real-time platform. We track more data on startups than anyone in the world and use that as competitive advantage, both in investing but also in supporting our portfolios. So we're sort of one of the first sort of tech-enabled or AI-driven venture funds. With me is Alex Garden.
Hey, hi, I'm Alex Garden, CEO, co-CEO, and co-founder of Zoom-Pizza. I'd like to think we make the best delivery pizza in the country. It's delivered on average about 20 minutes after you order it. Same price or less as Domino's, half the calories, half the cholesterol, half the fat, and we do it all with robots and AI and trucks and about 3,000 other complicated things we didn't want to invent, but we had to.
All right, and Cheetah.
Yeah, hi, I'm Cheetah, co-founder and CEO of EquBot. EquBot stands for Equity Robot. It's not a chatbot. What we do is we parse almost every public companies out there, their financial data, and all the relevant news articles, like millions of articles every day. We combine them together so that we can give very sophisticated tools for financial advisors. Like financial advisors, they can't deal with so much of information out there, so we are trying to make their life easier. We are also enabling an ETF, which will be running on AI in New York Stock Exchange pretty soon.
Okay. All right, and Felipe.
Yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Felipe. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Kiwi. And we basically make real robots for food delivery.
That's great. And so AI is one of the biggest buzzwords in the Valley. It seems like every company is tagging it onto their name the way the .com was prevalent in the late 90s. You know, when you guys look at your respective businesses, where do you think AI, robotics, and the related areas, machine learning, are going to have a huge impact? And where do you think are the limitations?
Yeah, I can go. The way I see AI is a muscle power. It's a tool. It's not going to run over the world. Like it's not going to replace all of us pretty soon. Wherever things that we need, we can apply cognitive rules. We can apply AI. So like, if somebody, we don't care, for example, we don't care who delivers the pizza. AI can deliver the pizza. But if we think somebody individuality, I don't think that would be hard. So it will be a tool in many different ways, healthcare, everywhere. I think we'll be seeing AI. I think the fascinating thing about it is at some point of time, we won't even realize the AI is driving many things. It is part of our life. But at the same time, it's not going to, that's my opinion, it's not going to replace all of us.
Okay. Felipe?
In our case, we believe that AI is the way to improve and make us more efficient. Right now, like AI and robotics and this stuff, what it's trying to make is to lower the costs in a lot of things and also make them more efficient and faster. And in the coming years, it's going to be good for the society to have this kind of technologies.
Now, I know you guys are a little bit different than me. More focused on the robotics side of things, but how do you think about the impact of how you've reinvented your company?
Yeah, so one of the areas that we invested a lot of time and energy into was understanding the role of automation broadly in our business. So for us, that means a lot of different things. It means AI, machine learning, robotics, general purpose automation. And the reason we do these things, it has to be in service of something. We do it because it allows us to significantly lower our labor expense relative to the rest of the restaurant industry. And the reason we do that, we take a huge part of that captured surplus and we reinvest it into much, much higher quality food, but we have much better margins. And the people that we do employ all make a great living. They make a minimum of $15 an hour. In many cases, they make more than that. The average is $16.31. They have full medical, dental, vision benefits for them and their families, fully subsidized, no copay, and they're all shareholders. And if you're someone, I'm thinking of one person in particular, chosen at random, who has been making pizza for 14 years. The gentleman is very, very smart, very talented guy. his life circumstances didn't give him the break that he was looking for, and getting a job working at Zoom, making pizza, has changed the trajectory, the fortunes of his entire family. And so in our case, we've applied general automation, which includes several layers of AI, to producing a better, healthier product for consumers, creating a better life for our employees, and doing all of that with great margins, which is good for our investors. And I think that's the balance that you were talking about, one that I believe a lot in, which is, we're about to see this coming wave where automation and AI is going to broadly affect every business. Every CEO is going to have to make decisions about it. And conventional wisdom over the last 100 years says you take all the captured surplus income and return it to shareholders, but that's about to change. There's a social consequence we're all going to have to wrestle with as it relates to automation, and specifically as it relates to AI. And that's the really interesting conversation to me, is like, what are we going to do as CEOs with it?
So how do you guys think about that? I mean, both of your industries, financial services and transportation logistics, employ huge numbers of people. How do you see their roles evolving over time, and how do you think about the transition as you start to bring AI into more of the sort of workflow and processes that normally would have been done by humans?
Yeah, well, it's important to say that like AI automation, it's happening, but it's still too early. Yeah, it's maybe, for example, in our case, to replace or to have like replace couriers, it's going to take maybe between 5 or 10 years. But the important thing that I want to mention is that, for example, we just work in UC Berkeley, and for example, for a student, it's really difficult to get food on demand because it's expensive. Like, they have to pay the delivery fee, the service fee, plus tips, so they have to pay like $9. And the students are broke, so they can't afford that. So with our approach, like what we are trying to do is to offer this kind of services that exist now to more people. And in that transition, I think that maybe people, like there is the universal basic income, that I still say that it's too early to discuss that, but those approaches are very interesting. Like if cost of living it's actually cheaper, you can do like whatever you want. If you don't want to be a courier, you maybe just want to have your life in music or arts. That could happen.
But a sense you disagree.
Yeah.
I don't believe in universal basic income.
Okay.
I believe in the fundamentals of economics. I think the fundamentals of economics is like, it's kind of evolution. Like, we have to compete with each other. I think competition brings enrichment to our life. So AI is changing the cost structure. How is cost structure in your business, cost structure in pizza delivery business, and it's making our life easier. So think about it like the way, if you see from agricultural economy to industrial economy to information age and the AI age, we can say, it is changing the structure of the society. It doesn't mean that people are sitting idle. They are still working, but in a different kind of ecosystem. So I think that's what is going to happen. The AI there will be still jobs. You can't really go and replace everything with AI. AI is a tool that augments our life. It's not replace us. Like for financial, like I'm in the finance industry, we are trying to augment what financial advisors are trying to do. Is it going to replace all the financial advisors? No. Is it going to replace all the quantitative hedge fund? I like to, but I don't think it's going to replace the hedge fund guys. It will be still there. The people interaction, the thing that require individuality, I don't think that is going to replace the AI. Universal basic income, I don't think it's going to happen.
But for example, what do you do when, for example, self-driving cars? 20% of the jobs are related with driving a car. And that's going to happen. Yeah, that's something that you can't avoid. What is going to happen with those 20% of people with those jobs? Like,
yeah.
What do you think? Don't you think that?
Can I weigh in on that?
Yeah, of course.
So, obviously, we are constantly being asked by people to talk about, what is the consequence of creating a new model that has fewer people, even if they're better compensated. And So we've gone back and we've studied the historical consequence of the last big shift, which, as you mentioned, was the Industrial Revolution. And there's several examples. One I like to use, though, is that there was the mechanical loom was introduced, and the mechanical loom essentially put all the weavers out of business. And so people ran around saying, okay, well, there's your proof that, sorry, you guys are probably all enjoying the class breaking line in here. There's your proof that automation of labor is going to be the end of society and lead to either massive unemployment, dystopian future, or UBI. What actually happened was that the cost of fabric plummeted, and what was previously the domain of only very wealthy people, which was custom clothing, became almost ubiquitous. And there were more jobs created for sewers times 100 than there were jobs previously for weavers. And so what happened actually was the introduction of radical disruptive new technology created more jobs than it destroyed. But there was a valley of uncurated social consequence between the destruction of the first set of jobs and the creation of the next set. So we can talk about UBI, which is a solution for a long-term problem where there's no more work for people to do, but there's a surplus of resources. But what's more likely is that there's a short-term change between the destruction of certain classes of jobs, like, for instance, wealth managers, and the reintroduction, or hedge fund managers, if you get your way, and the reintroduction of a new class of jobs. And this is what I'm talking about. As CEOs, we're going to have to talk about how do we help manage, or how do we help curate that social consequence so that it's accretive for society versus just taking the captured surplus, returning it to shareholders, letting the government take care of the unemployment problem in the shift, and then it'll all sort itself out in the end. I think we can do better than we did 100 years ago.
Absolutely, yeah. So I totally agree on the point. The opportunities, so same as evolution, there is an evolution of opportunity happens. Opportunity moves from one place to another place. And for all those entrepreneurs out there, I think that's something that you should be more aware of it, is that when you look at it, opportunities, even if it is there, you have to create it, right? I think that you can see the gaps, that they're always the moving gap. You can find those areas, and it changes based on what is happening. And the AI is going to introduce those kind of things. They're going to create a new kind of gap.
The nature of work is going to change.
The nature of work is going to change. So it will be interesting. That's what I hope.
And so all three of you work in regulated industries, right? And in the case particularly of transportation, like lots of labor unions and whatnot. How do you see you mentioned 5 to 10 years for some of these things to be adopted. I look at this as multiple layers of sort of things that have to happen. One is the technology element of it. It's like there's a social element, there's a regulatory element, there's retraining and various elements that you'll need to ultimately make that transition, plus the sort of obsolescence of existing equipment that's out there or systems. How do you guys think about hedging against what is sort of unclear timing, given that there are some non-technology inputs into when some of these technologies can really be full-blown to their technical capabilities?
Again, coming back to the same way to think about it is wherever there is a need of individuality, I think that will be there. So the regulatory things, the regulatory aspects of it, like both in finance sector and the transportation sectors. So think about in the transportation sectors, there will be, it will be replacing, I think first in the trucking industry, it will be a huge demand. It can replace those things. But at the same time, we cannot take away the regulatory aspects of it. So that is where people who think about it, who makes those rules or how we look at it, the issues, how the liabilities get accumulated, I think that we will have some individuals looking at it, and I think those kind of jobs will be there. I think probably there will be more kind of those jobs. I'll be expecting in the trucking industry probably more people looking at it and making sure that we don't get into the landmine of those lot of lawsuits, right? An accident and all. I think that's gonna. So anywhere there is a requirement of individuality. Like for an example, we have to be careful about AI. Like we are creating a lot of chatbots. I don't expect a hotline for suicide, for instance, right? Mm-hmm. That won't be run by the AI forever. So wherever there is need for somebody, a compassion, for an example, so those kind of things, we will be there, will be prevalent in future, more of it. So anywhere there is a requirement individuality, I think those kind of jobs are going to grow. That's what I think I'll hedge against.
you know, I try not to get drawn into the debate about how effective AI will be one day, because the truth is we don't know.
Yes, absolutely not.
And as a result, we can't really know how it's going to affect the future of work. But I think we can all agree that technology continues to improve, and people will find new applications for it. So rather than getting drawn into like the future state, what I prefer to focus on is what's available today that's practical, what's available in the next 12 months that's worth me investing in, and how do we apply those things in ways that directly impact either customers or our employees' well-being and work satisfaction. You know, one example, and this is a silly thing, but that a lot of people would take for granted, but it's super practical. So we have this robot named Bruno, and Bruno picks pizzas up off the end of our line and puts them in the oven. And you would think, holy smokes, you guys built a $150,000 work cell to pick up a pizza and put it down again. And there's vision, and there's actually a whole bunch of interesting ladder logic that's hooked up to an adaptive learning algorithm. And you think, okay, why on earth would you do that to replace a spatula and a person? Well, it turns out the line is a food-safe variable speed line that spits off a pizza every 22 seconds. And the oven is an 800-degree baking oven that has pizza stones in it and all this other innovation. If you watch a person do that job for 8 hours, not only is it unbelievably unsatisfying and mind-numbing, but it's actually quite dangerous, because that 800-degree oven, the odds that you will burn yourself in an 8-hour shift are 100%. And some of those burns can be quite bad. So we've completely eliminated that problem, and we no longer have a person doing that work. Now, it turns out it's like a Rube Goldberg device to move a pizza. It's ridiculous, and now we've got it worked out. It's easier. But that's an area where we were able to take today's technology and apply it to something which on the surface doesn't seem like it's a big problem, but actually was a whole game changer. And for what it's worth, that work cell pays itself off in about 9 months, and after that, it's pure gravy.
Yeah.
And how about you on the last mile?
Well, answering your question, I believe that, for example, in our case, that there are already two states that passed law in like robots, food delivery with robots in the sidewalks. That was pretty impressive. Like, it was very impressive that was too fast. But still, I think that it's still, we still need to experiment more in that part, in that field. And in terms of AI, I think that, of course, it's still too early. We all agreed on that. But according to the potential that I saw on AI, I think that it should be regulated. Yeah, I agree on that. It should be regulated. And in the valley between, meanwhile, we, like the companies, we kind of like continue experiment with our products. And for example, we are doing in a campus because it's easier to experiment there. Yeah.
Got it. And how do you deal with like the last 10 feet? Right, if there's a door or a gate or a dog or, you know.
That's important because, for example, our robot is not totally fully automated. And I think that other companies that are making robots like for food delivery, it's not totally fully automated. And for example, we always use a human. And for example, these states, Virginia, in the law they said that each robot has to be remotely, under surveillance remotely, always. So, for example, with the last 1 minute, actually we have the last 1 minute, we made it always with a human taking control of the robot. So we can make sure that the experience is good and that we are actually in the correct address. Of course, there are a lot of fields and technology that we can apply to be sure that we are in front of the door. But semi-automation, it's going to be a trend that I think, in my opinion, will be very interesting. I assume that also with Shrimp Pizza, it's semi-automated, and you still have a lot of humans involved in the process.
But let's say there's an apartment complex. How does it navigate stairs or elevators or those types of things?
Still too early. It's not possible yet.
I can talk a little bit about that because we have that problem too. It's actually an economic trade-off. So you can provide, there's always a way at a cost to provide a high-quality service where the food is delivered directly to the person, regardless of where they are. And we have that problem of homes behind gates or apartment complexes or elevators, but we also have the problem of parks. People order a Zoom Pizza to the middle of a park all the time, which has its own unique challenges. What we do is we use a combination of economic incentives and customer education. So we'll say, look, if you're in the middle of a park and you want your pizza delivered there, or if you want it delivered right to your door in an apartment building, there's probably a delivery service surcharge. And if you want to come to the curb and pick it up, there's an economic incentive to do that. And we're not doing it to disadvantage the customer. We're just saying, look, you can have anything you want, but we have to do it in a way that is economically sensible.
Got it. And in financial services, how do you ensure that it's not another long-term capital management? What are the human checks and balances on algorithms and the sort of black box?
Yeah, actually, you got pretty much said that. So there has to be a human check. So even though we are providing a lot of consolidated informations, at the end of it, be it the automated fund you're managing, or be it the tools that we provide, there is eventually a person who's looking at it and making sure that it's not screwing up, like doing something stupid. Because at this stage, we cannot let it go free. We are not there. I don't think, I'm not sure whether we'll be there or not. So there, and specifically when there's a significant amount of risk involved, we have to put a person looking at it. But what it does is that we give him the muscle power, right? He's not alone. Like he's empowered with a lot of data to make sure he make a more sensible decision based on that.
Are there any questions out in the audience for the speakers?
There is a question over there.
It's hard to see hands. So the question, if I understood, the question, if I understood correctly, was around, with the displacement of jobs, is there going to be a tax on robots?
Yeah. So I think first it's important to get grounded on what were the overarching sociological norms at the time. So around the turn of the century, we hadn't really delved into what we broadly call socialism today. The idea that either governments or institutions have a moral obligation towards the people that they're responsible for. If you think about it, labor was seen very much as a mechanical asset, and it wasn't really until the 30s and the 40s that we start to see some of those concepts take hold. So first of all, the sociological climate we're doing business in today is very different than it was then, so it helps to understand it, but you can't do a direct comparison. Second thing is, I'm not convinced, I'm open to the conversation, but I'm not convinced that government needs to provide the legislation that fills the cave, as you called it. Because, and I don't mean this to sound disparaging, but I think the pace that government moves at will not be sufficient to fill that cave. I think what's going to happen is we're seeing a nonlinear increase in the capabilities of AI, and frankly, a nonlinear increase of the cost effectiveness of general purpose automation. And Frank, if you think about it, the Treasury Secretary just said that automation displacing labor isn't something that's on their radar for the next 50 to 100 years, which is like a mind-blowing statement if you think about it, right, from where we sit. So I think what's important is that leaders of companies need to fill the role that would historically have been filled by government due to the rate of change. And I'm just going to close with one more thought on that. Many people would argue, well, why would leaders do that? Why not just make your bonus by crushing your numbers for the quarter by bringing in the automation? And so here's something to think about provocatively. The CEO of Wendy's just went on the record publicly touting as a win the fact that Wendy's is rolling out self-serving order kiosks in their front of house in 1,000 restaurants nationwide. So you would say, okay. And he was so excited this is going to let them dramatically reduce labor in the restaurants, and just going on and on about this. But here's the problem. What percentage of Wendy's customers are currently employed in jobs that stand to be displaced by the automation of labor in the next 10 years? 61% drop in retail in the US last year. So we're seeing the bottom fall out of some of these markets. So if you want to be a CEO who's going on record talking about how awesome it is that you get to cut jobs because of automation, expect picket lines outside your office pretty soon. So I think there's both a moral obligation as well as a self-reinforcing economic condition that's going to force companies to take the lead in this change. That's my opinion. Thanks for the long answer.
I can just briefly add that. So what AI is bringing is moving so the taxation is about fairness and equity. That's how I view it. So the AI is moving, shifting some of those economics from one set of people to another set of individuals. So if you still apply the fairness of equity, I think it's good that we are having that discussion. So yeah, I think government need to catch up pretty soon. Otherwise, we will be seeing a void over there. But at the same time, like are you going to tax each and every robot? Probably, I don't know, think so. But the whole mechanism is going to play in together, say that, okay, hey, these guys are capturing the higher value. That means the taxation is going to happen over there. So.
All right, I think our time is up, but thank you all.
No, we have
two more minutes. Oh, okay. Great. And so, in the transportation sector, which is obviously, even stronger from a, union and labor perspective, I mean, how do you see like trucking and some of these sectors where there'll be large gainers in some parts of the country and parts of the country that lose dramatically economically as a result of this?
As I said before, like to have these robots working, we will need a lot of human power, yes, and so we still need a lot of people to help us like have this working. And one reason that I have to say that is that if we can offer better prices and better service and a better product, more people are going to can afford to have that. And I think that the transition it's going to be enough, like that valley that you said before. If we have semi-automation, that could work.
All right. Well, I think all of us are probably going to take the under on the 50 to 100 year projection on when this is all going to happen. But it'll be exciting to watch as each of you roll out your businesses and how far you can take the technology in the coming years.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks.